Right, today I am really thrilled to welcome Jamie Icke to the podcast. And let me tell you, for those of you that don't know Jamie, which I think is not going to be many of you, Jamie's a fearless truth seeker, independent thinker, and the CEO of Iconic, which is a groundbreaking media platform dedicated to uncovering the stories and perspectives mainstream outlets often ignore or are not allowed to talk to. If any of you are not a member of Iconic, the link will be below. You've got to join that platform. It's fantastic. But obviously, very well known as the son of David Icke, you've grown up immersed in the pursuit of truth and questioning systems that shape our world. But you're also very much carving out your own path, empowering others to think critically, live authentically, with a real passion for health, hosting the weekly health code on Iconic. You, with your brother Gareth and Richard Willett, have just launched a new weekly show, Iconic, on Iconic and X, called Trending, which I'm absolutely loving. So, how are you doing, Jamie, and what is happening in your world at the moment? Oh, you're on
Yeah,
mute.
I'm very good. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's a real pleasure to be here. Obviously, I was muted, was I?
Oh, it's all right now.
Am
I
I
just
unmuted
it's a
now?
bit of a delay.
Yeah,
You're fine now. Yeah.
that's all right. My wife's been trying to mute me for years. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure to talk to you again. Yeah, there's so much going on at the moment. As many people that are looking at anything remotely alternative, or even just looking at the news, you'll see 2025 already has been quite a event full year for so many in different parts of the world. There's so many different things going on, all to occupy your mind and put you in a state of fear and anxiety, which so many sadly have fallen for and will fall for. So we felt it was really important to really hit the ground running this year and get lots of content out really early to try and give people a different viewpoint on world events, on individuals that maybe might appear to be doing good things, but what's the true motivations behind that. And yeah, it's been really successful so far. With you mentioned trending there, 1,000 views a day, which has been a really good start. Yeah, hopefully that will continue to build. And with the health stuff, as you mentioned, as you all know, the start of the year, everyone has these great intentions that they're going to change the way that they look after themselves and they're going to lose weight and they're going to eat better. And this year is going to be the year I get in shape and all of that. And as we know, by the end of the second week of January, or certainly by the end of
Yep.
January, a good 50+% of people have gone back to the same habits and lifestyles that they were living previously. So I think it's really important to try and really make January an important month for people and really give people inspiring content to set them up for a really good year.
I love it. I love it. You're cutting in and out with your internet a bit, but we'll keep going because we've got so much to talk about today. And anyone, I just before we dive in today, I honestly mean it. If you haven't joined Iconic, please join it because we really need to support these free speech platforms. And your first one that you did on the health code with Dr. Judy Morgan, I'm passionate. My main business is animal health. It was brilliant. But today, Jamie, one of the things that I wanted to start by asking your opinion on is is the link between what I see between in animal behavior, we have something called displacement behavior, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. And what I'm seeing with all, as you say, 2025 has gone off with a bang, and we've got everything from the grooming gangs, which we know are way more than just grooming gangs in the UK, to Trump buying up America, to the fires. And one of the things that really shocks me all the time is that this tendency for humans, particularly online, but also for top people like I heard the Jordan Peterson and Piers Morgan interview, where they deflect attention away from the real issue by population blaming. So it's the British people's fault, or it's the Americans people's fault, or the Canadians' fault. So what I mean by displacement behavior is with animals, if they're under a high level of stress, sustained stress, or a threat that they're overwhelmed by, they'll do something called a displacement behavior, which redirects their energy and behavior onto unrelated actions. So lots of people know that their cats will overgroom if they're really stressed. Dogs, if they're stressed during training, might start sniffing the ground or yawning. Same with horses. And with humans, we're seeing a huge amount of, in my opinion, displacement behavior, where instead of really directing our attention towards what we can do to sort the problems out, we're venting at each other, and it's like it's the British population's fault. And when actually the media people that are saying this don't seem to have been called out by anyone on this yet.
No, absolutely. It's a really good old-fashioned tactic, divide and rule. If you're trying to stop somebody fighting a common enemy and seeing that, between all the differences and fault lines, you're all being essentially screwed over by the same people, the same entities. Yeah, they don't want that. They want people fighting each other. We're seeing race wars, we're seeing ideological wars, religious wars. Pretty much every conflict in history has been through one of those different, fault lines, income bracket, gender, sexuality, all those different things. Even age now, we're seeing more of that. And that's obviously to try and stop people having some form of unity, because as we've known through history, when there's been unity and people have put down the barriers, great things have happened, and they've been able to overturn things that they didn't want. Always use a great example of the poll tax back in Margaret Thatcher's day, when everybody
Yeah.
that because that affected people with money, people without money, in working class areas, in rich areas. All those fault lines were dropped. People came together, and as a result, that tax disappeared, and it brought down the person they thought no one would bring down. So I think that shows the power in unity if people are together. We saw the same through the COVID period. All those people on those marches where
Yeah.
they probably disagree on so many things, but we all agreed on one, which is that this isn't acceptable. And as a result, that's how you got 1 million+ people in London on a good few occasions. And the impact that had on policy was clear to see compared to other countries that didn't have that. They were able to go a lot further. So I think it's very clear that a tactic is to continue to try and divide people. And it's time that we actually took a step back and looked and thought, well, who benefits from us being divided? Who benefits from me disliking a certain demographic of people? And it's invariably never you, and it's invariably never the person you're being told to dislike. It's always somebody above. And I think a great saying that we use here is when everybody's looking left and right, the key is to look up. And
Yeah.
who's controlling both sides? We're seeing at the moment this kind of theatre of Elon Musk versus Keir Starmer, and this theatre that actually, really behind the stage, they're probably very much working on the same page towards the same agenda and the same outcome. So when it comes to health, that's a really interesting perspective, because health is a very personal thing. It's a very personal journey. However, as we all know, everyone listening will know, when you've got people around you that are very supportive and have a similar mindset to you, it is much easier. It's very difficult if you're the only one in your household, for example, that wants to eat well, or wants to go out for walks, or wants to go to do exercise and activities. It is much harder to find that motivation to do it purely on your own. So having people around you that have the same motivation, ideology, and same care is really, really beneficial. And I think many people can probably relate to that in couples and and so on. So I think unity has to be one of the key messages of this year. Doesn't mean we have to agree on everything, because that's never going to happen. But we can have mutual respect for each other's beliefs and focus on the things that we agree on first, rather than immediately focusing on the things that we don't agree on. Because ultimately, I think we all want the same thing. We all want to live, a good quality standard of life. We want to live for as long as possible. We want to take care of our families. We want to experience nice things. We might disagree on what those nice things are and what looking after your family means, but we generally all want the same thing. We just want to be left alone and have as little imposition on our life as possible. So let's start there and build from that. That's kind of the message that we try and put out. There's a lot more that unites us than divides us. But if you listen to the media, as you pointed out, you'll believe it's the other way around.
Oh, I just love everything about that message. And what I love about you and the whole of Iconic, really. I mean, I know that let's talk about, you've grown up the son of David Icke. I'd love to hear a little bit about that experience. But really, for someone so young, I love the grasp of so many of the topics that you've got, Jamie, and also how you actually personify them in really living your life. I mean, everyone can look at you and see that you're fit, you're healthy. I know that you're passionate about how you're bringing your children up. Heard your lovely conversation about animals on Iconic. So what's that journey been like? And people are always wanting solutions. what have you learned through your childhood and growing up in that environment and your everything that you've been examining there about how people can be more understanding and direct their attention? Because it's really hard for people to do. We just go so much into defensive mode, which doesn't get anyone anywhere really.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree. Well, my childhood was all about football. So I was involved in sport from a really young age, started playing at 7 years old and ended up at Manchester United right up until I was 16. And I thought I was going to be a professional footballer. Played for a few other clubs as well, like Southampton, Portsmouth, Aston Villa, through my teens. And I thought I was going to be a professional footballer. And that was kind of the path that was mapped out for me. So what that meant is from a really young age, I took care of myself. I ate good things. I was training, when other kids after school would be going and sitting in the rec and smoking weed and eating whatever, me and my dad would be training 2, 3 times a week. I'd be playing for two different teams, so I'd be essentially playing football or training 5 days a week, right from probably 12 years old all the way to 16. So what that did, although I haven't ended up being a professional footballer, it kept me away from a lot of the pitfalls that you get into as a teenager, which is smoking,
Mm.
drinking, drugs, things like that. And where I grew up on the Isle of Wight, particularly the drugs and drinking, that's a really close to the surface thing, simply because so many young people are bored. There's not a lot
Yeah,
to do, not a lot to do down there, and there's been a massive drug problem on the Isle of Wight in youngsters for years. I've seen it firsthand, and that kind of interest in sport and desire to be a professional kept me away from all of that, which is something I've always been incredibly grateful for. But what that led me to have an interest in immediately is obviously sport in general, and also competition, and that whole strive to be the best version of yourself. At 12 years old, 13 years old, you're being sent into trial matches with a bunch of kids that you don't know that all want the same thing you want. And especially in my position, because I played in goal, you're fighting for one position. So it literally is you
yeah,
head to head with another person. So it's a really interesting mentality and psychology to, I guess, have so young.
yeah,
And that love for competition has been throughout my life really, really important. Even if it's competition with yourself, I want to be better than I am yesterday. I want to get to the gym and lift more than I lifted last week. I want to run quicker than I ran last week. So that was installed in me very young, and I still have that now. Everyone says I'm way too competitive, even with my own kids. I always joke with my son now, I'm not training to be healthy, I'm training so you wait as long as possible before you can beat me at anything physical. Like, I
yeah.
want you to be 25 and terrified to run a race against me. And hopefully that motivation will keep me looking after myself for years to come. But in terms of how that kind of skewed my worldview, is you realize when you have an interest in taking care of yourself, you realize how many don't. And in fact,
Yeah.
the vast majority don't. And obviously, I lived a really, really restricted diet pretty much most of my life, a lot of good stuff. And you realize that all the stuff that are pushed onto kids, pushed onto teenagers, and the cheap, quick foods that most people consume on a daily basis are just full of rubbish. Most people don't look after themselves in terms of exercise, in terms of drinking enough, in terms of sleeping right, and all of those things. And that's what really got my interest in that. As I've seen from being a teenager to today, the trajectory of the health of people all over the world just decline and decline and decline and decline. And the big one for me, which I started to see, because I've got a niece and nephew that are quite a bit younger than me, I was going back to, pick them up from school and see them and stuff when I was in my early 20s. The amount of obesity in younger children and teenagers and kids of 7, 8, 9, 10 started noticing that massive increase from when I was at school just a few years before. And as we know, that trend has just continued and continued and continued. That really made me think, right, we need to take control of our health, and we need something that really is a hard reset in this area, because at the moment this trajectory is just going to continue, and you're going to have more and more kids struggling with eating disorders. You're going to have more struggling with diabetes, heart disease, all these things at such a young age. And as we're seeing in different parts of the world now, like it's in America, you've got 50% of people over 25 are on one or more medication every day. Like,
Okay.
that's just an incredible statistic. Child obesity has tripled in the last 25 years in this country. And that's probably, that was from a couple of years ago, that graph. It's probably gone even higher now. So that's where the passion for health came in, because it's you mentioned people want solutions. Health's the easiest place to start. half of the battle and the fight on people's minds through 2020, 2021 was for the right to choose what you put in your body and to not have anything forced upon you. And that freedom to do that is essential. It's a basic human right. But my next question is, okay, and what are you doing with that freedom? It's like that phrase, knowledge is power. Well, it's not really. The use of it is power. If you have the knowledge and do
Yeah.
nothing with it, you might as well not have it. If we're going to have body autonomy and decide what we put in our body, and we're going to make the decision to put tons of seed oils and, tons of processed foods in, then might as well have taken the jab. What did you fight for? You know what I mean? And that's my attitude towards it. And it's a case of, looking at your body as the most important and most expensive gift you will ever own. You're never going to get another one, and you're never going to get any time back. And I think a lot of people look at the trajectory of life expectancy going up and think, okay, people are getting healthier, but what about the quality of that life? So many people are spending the last decade or so of their life not being able to do anything, not being able to necessarily walk in combs, not being able to articulate what they're trying to say because their brains are neurologically completely shot to pieces. And I think that's really sad. So that's where my passion for health came from, is essentially a hard reset on, if we keep going like this, it's only going to get worse. And, you're going to have people in their 40s that can't do the most basic of physical things. And I think an aspiration for us should be to do everything we can do today for as long as possible. I still want to be able to walk to the shop and carry my own shopping home, climb the stairs when I'm 75 years old. And all the decisions that you make in your early years have a massive impact on that. Because I think we spoke about this when you came on my show. Is it's like it's like filling up a glass, isn't it? It's cumulative,
Yeah.
and eventually it overflows. And what you do at the bottom of the glass is going to affect the top eventually. So, if we can try and install, for me, it comes from a sense of self-respect and self-worth, that, I'm worth looking after. If everyone has that attitude that, I'm worth something to the world. So if I can do what I can do to make myself the best I can be, to contribute as much as I can for as long as I can, the world's going to benefit from that. And I think you mentioned, people looking for distractions and ways to blame. Emotional eating and things like that are so important. Stress eating, hence why so many people in those lifestyles put on weight and have health conditions, because of that increase in stress and that look for distractions and things to mask whatever the problem is. So I've gone through quite a lot there, but I think, fundamentally for me, that's where the passion came from. It came from a sadness that you're seeing people's lives get worse, and you're seeing people's quality of life get worse, and wanting to do something about it.
Oh, I just love all about that. And I think this is, when we're looking at the horrors that are going on in the world in all our countries, none of us are blame-free in all this. Yes, we've all got a price to pay. How much are we out in our local communities? I was the generation where we were all had to be working mums. And when I say had to, of course we didn't have to. There's a lot of people that are really good at not doing that. But actually, when you want to afford good food and things. But I want to touch on something really important. I think you've covered there, Jamie, is this black and white thinking we have. So there's so much like demonizing sport now. Now, I've grown up, both my two children and my husband and I as youngsters, we were passionate about sport. And what that gave, I can remember my father was so happy because I was obsessed with gymnastics and horses when I was growing up. And he knew it kept me off the streets, literally.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky to have a very supportive set of parents that actually would literally scrape the bank for themselves to send me to be able to spend some time at the stables and things like this. So, you do need that supportive environment around you. But both my children, who are in their early 20s now, have grown up being passionate about sports. And my daughter's a football player, still is. And actually, it gives you such good education. So people will demonize the whole sports world. And of course, there's bad things in it without realizing that, back to this Japanese, I think it's Ikigai, I can never pronounce it properly, where this purpose, finding your purpose in life and having some good role models and a why to keep you on that purpose. So coming back to what we're seeing with the horrific things that everyone's been bombarded with, what advice can you give to people now from everything you've learned about how do people keep themselves positive and perhaps direct their attention and energy onto something worthwhile because I always find it quite a tricky one, Jamie, this fine line between keeping well aware of what's going on so that you can make informed decisions. You know, my whole work is about if you don't know what's poisoning you, you don't know what to do to get it out your system. So how can people keep informed but still really enjoy their life and be using their energy and attention in constructive ways?
Well, I think that the key is to look at things that you can influence. And what I can't remember the exact saying, but it's basically God give me strength to change what I can and accept what I can't, and the ability to know the difference. And I think that's very key because you can look at the massive problems of the world. We can look here now and see what's going on in the Middle East, in Gaza, and think, this is absolutely abhorrent what's going on, and I feel so helpless I can't do anything about it on my own. And that may feel very true. And as a result, you may feel that it's a waste of time. What's the point in doing anything at all? But you can influence how you behave and how you conduct yourself. And if you look at how, if you take care of yourself, for example, physically with what you eat and the way you look, the way you take care of yourself, that is abundantly obvious to the rest of you. Like your body as you walk down the street is your walking CV.
Yeah,
Everyone can see you. And I think that's the great thing I think about, it being obvious that you look after yourself. Everyone knows you've not bought that. You've had to work for that. So immediately that tells you, people that you interact with a few things about your character that, you have consistency, that you will forego short-term pleasure for long-term goals. You basically have that level of self-respect, which I think then can rub off on people and you can become an example to people. And you can apply that to so many other things. If you stand up in the face of injustice and you speak out and you stand against things that you don't believe are right, again, that can inspire others. Sometimes if something is going on in a public place, it just takes one person to stand up and say, no, this isn't acceptable. And you watch how quickly 4, 5, 6 other people will come out of the woodwork, but they wouldn't have if that one person hadn't have been the first one over the top, because,
yeah,
you know, nobody wants to be the first one over the top because generally they're the ones that get taken down first. But I think having that bravery and having that attitude, that tenacious attitude to do what you believe to be right, no matter what the consequences are, I think that's an ultimate superpower, because so many don't have that. In fact, the vast majority don't have that. Most people are followers. They follow whichever side they think is going to benefit them, or
yeah,
whichever side they think are going to win. We always joke here, 5% of the people control the world. It's only going to take 5% to change it, and the 90 in the middle will just be going, what's happened? What's just
yeah,
happened? And that kind of is, in my opinion, the numbers that we're looking at. So firstly, that's quite exciting in the sense of we don't need 95% of people to make an impact and make a difference. As I mentioned earlier about the COVID protests, million people of 70 odd million in the country, that created an impact. So we don't need the majority, which if that's what we were striving for, we're not going to achieve, because the majority of people, unfortunately, still aren't ready for this. We need a big enough number that we can create an impact. And in a sense, what we are trying to sell to people, which is life doesn't need to be a constant struggle. Life doesn't need to be a constant battle with your health. You don't need to be feeling depressed all the time. Everything isn't your fault. You don't need to be gaslit by all these media regimes and government regimes. What we're selling is so much better than what they're selling, which is more of the same, and things are only going to get worse. And, we're in for a tough winter and people are going to struggle to heat or eat and all those things. They're not selling anything that people actually want.
yeah,
All we need to do is, in a sense, perfect what we're trying to pitch to people, which is that the world can be better than it is, and here's how. And I think we'll see a big change, almost overnight, in my opinion, when it finally comes. It's like a house of cards. You take out the bottom card, and the top will fall very quickly. But I think that's a key message for people is, if you want something to change, if you want the world to be a certain way, you need to embody that. You need to act like that. You need to put that out to people, and you will notice very quickly that you will inspire people. If you look through history, the people that we look back at
yeah,
and we idealize, and the people that, maybe not this generation, but people that, say my age, 30 and above, will look at, it's the mavericks. It's the people that stood up at the moment for what they believed. It's, your Martin Luther Kings, your Rosa Parks, your Malcolm X's, JFK's, people like that, Mandela, and people that at the time had the bravery to stand up and say, this isn't right, and I don't really care what happens to me. And most of those people I just named lost their lives as a result of
yeah,
standing for what they believed in. But for me, that's a price worth paying, because you mentioned about my children at the top. My ambition is to leave the world in a better place for them than it was when I got here, and certainly leave it in a better place than it is right now. And I don't really care about the consequences for me if that happens for them, because I feel a sense of responsibility. We chose to bring them into the world, and you don't want to leave them the direction of travel that we're on now, because I don't want to even consider what that's going to look like in 10, 15, 20, 25 years. If you just said to people in 2019, in 5 years, the world will look like this, and you'd have described them 2024, wouldn't have believed you. They wouldn't have believed half the things that we have seen in the last 5 years were possible.
Yeah.
Yet they happened. And that just goes to show how quickly things can change. If you'd have said to somebody on the 1st of March in 2020, there's going to be a nationwide lockdown and this is going to happen, they'd have laughed at you and called you a conspiracy theorist. And just 2 or 3 weeks later, it's exactly what happened. So, if we don't change this direction that the world is going in, I don't even want to comprehend what the next 5 years could look like, next 10 years could look like. So I feel it's a duty that we have. And I think, from a spiritual level, I think we all chose to be here. We all chose to be here at this time, in this place, to do something. And I don't believe that we all came to fail. So I think, although it may seem bleak at times, and it may seem very much like we're, fighting a losing battle, I don't believe we are.
I couldn't agree with you more. Do you think we've got to a stage where we expect too much perfectionism in people? So what I mean by that, Jamie, is that say if you take a herd of horses, their role about who's the leader changes based on what the task is and
Yeah.
also at different stages of their life. So you might have one horse that knows where the water is and one that, will be at the back and another strong one at the front protecting the herd from predators. But as those horses at the back and front get old, they move to the middle and the younger ones take over. What I sort of notice at the moment is this sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And if you're going to be someone who stands up as a leader in whatever area of life it is, you have to have certain different characteristics about you than perhaps someone who's more of a caring, nurturing sort of thing that will pick up the pieces afterwards. Do you think people are expecting too much from individuals now, and that we should sort of embrace people's strengths a bit more and not expect them to be all things to all people?
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because everybody has something to offer, but everybody also has weaknesses and things that they're not so good at. And I think by trying to expect perfection from people, like you said, you throw the baby out with the bathwater. You got people that you could have in your lives that will serve a fantastic purpose, and you can serve a fantastic purpose for them in a specific area, but in others, they're not going to be they're not going to be, what you need. So therefore, rather than try and make them do that as well, and if they can't do that, just disregard, then look at what people can do in terms of their strengths. And that's essentially where, for me, the ego is the problem, because it's got out of control. And I think, a healthy ego is not a bad thing. It's an ego that makes you have a shower in the morning, that makes you put clean clothes on, makes you leave the house in a way that you look respectable. If you didn't have any kind of self-respect in that context, then everyone would go to work looking like a right mess. But so I think it's got out of control, where people expect and demand perfection, as you said, from people, and think, if you can't do everything for me or for us or in this area, you're not worthy of being in my life. Whereas I think if we look back to a state of like a cooperative where everybody has a different contribution to make, and it's, what can you bring to the table? What can I bring to the table for you? And get it back to a much more human scale, then I think, we can all work together. Because as I say, I think everybody has something to offer. And I think also what ties into that is, you mentioned at the top, the constant division
Mm.
in people. I think people have been, in a sense, conditioned to not like each other, to see other people as a threat all the time, rather than seeing somebody as a potential ally
Mm.
and seeing somebody as someone you could potentially work with and support each other. You see them as a threat, whether that be someone who comes into your workplace, you thinks after your job, whether that be a new friend you meet, thinks after your wife. They're the first mindsets people have, more so, I would suggest, than who's this new person? They could maybe help, improve what we're doing. Who's this new friend that might bring something new to my life that I don't have at the moment? So I think, reversing that, where we see people as individuals, as people, and we judge them on their merits and, the way that they behave and conduct themselves, rather than prejudging people and constantly looking at somebody as, what can you do for me?
Mm.
I think that would change a lot. And I think, yeah, everyone has something to contribute. And if you think about the building of say a house or something like that, that requires so many different skills, so many different people, so many different inputs to make happen. And without all those people with those individual skills, whether it be the architect, the bricklayers, the carpenters, the joiners, the lorry drivers, all those people that contribute to build it, without them all doing their individual bit, that doesn't get built. And I think it's the same principle. I used to use that analogy with a jumbo jet in my presentation is, that didn't get built because of one person. It got built because someone had an idea and then thousands of people all worked together to make the final product. And I think if we apply that to the world that we want to create, it's the same principle. It's not going to be one person. It's not going to be two people. It's going to be millions, billions, literally, of people all making their individual contribution to making it a better place. And a really simple thing, like, holding a door open for somebody.
Yeah.
I always make a point before, sadly, my dog passed away, but whenever we were walking in the morning, good morning, how are you doing today? Speak to people and interact with people, be polite, be courteous, offer to help people, and I think by doing that, you're putting that positivity out into the world, and invariably that will then get passed on and get passed on and get passed on. And before you know it, that tiny little act has changed 10 people's day. So I think in terms of that contribution that we can all make, we need to get back to the perspective that we all have our own gifts to bring to the world, and I think it's our duty to find out what ours is.
I love it. So talking of gifts, Iconic Media, absolutely fantastic. It's so impressive what you and your team have put together. And I think a lot of the problems from my personal perspective of where we're at now society-wise across all the countries watching this are because of the corruption in the media and the mainstream media and how much we've been fed misinformation. Yes, we've been fed misinformation from lots of other sources as well. So talk us through what people can expect from Iconic Media this year and why it's such a passion of you to have this.
Yeah, well, there's a passion behind starting it was a media organization and a platform as much as just a production company that's owned by people that actually care. When the alternative media started and we were using channels like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter before the censorship started to grow, you're playing football on a rigged pitch owned by somebody that wants you to fail. It was never gonna be something that was going to last. So it was very much a case of, right, we need our own system, we need our own platform that doesn't rely on others to be able to, one, pay people to make this content. One, there's no censorship. You're not beholden on somebody else's idea of what's acceptable and what is not. You have no areas that you can't go. You could just investigate the truth and you put that out there for people. And I think what the key message we do with Iconic is we won't tell you what to think in the same way that the BBC and other mainstream outlets will do the opposite. They might tell you what's happening sometimes, but they'll always skew it to whatever perspective they want you to think about a given event, whether that be who they want you to hate, who they want you to support, what they want you to think about a certain event, like who did it, who was behind it, that sort of so on. We don't do that because we believe that the audience have the intelligence that you'll have the information delivered to you and you come to your own conclusions because you want to do, that's how you should be living. You should be using your own eyes, ears, and brain to come to conclusions that feel right to you. We shouldn't be telling you how to think. Otherwise, what's the point of having a brain of your own? And so that's the opposite of the mainstream attitude for a start. But in terms of this year, we've got about 5 original documentaries planned. We've got now 7 shows that go out every single week from a podcast called What Af, which is a comedy podcast that takes a look at the stories around the world and puts them in a comical context and laughs at the madness of so many of them. We've got Trending 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, as you mentioned at the top. I've got a Health Code podcast where I'll interview people right across the health spectrum. Obviously, yourself came on last year. We had a animal therapist on this week. Next week, we've got an incredible nutritionist. We have right across the health spectrum. We have a show called Classified that goes out every week, which takes a look at the deeper esoteric symbolism and occult knowledge that's suppressed in hidden books and different geological events, different people, families, bloodlines, all those sorts of things that we see. We've got Gareth, my brother, who does a weekly show on news and current affairs. My dad, David, does a weekly show on news and current affairs, and we've just launched at the back end of last year a weekly show from America called Wake Up Call, with a brilliant host called Kristen. And we've got a show launching on the 20th from America as well, from Tennessee, which is going to be called This Week on the Web. That's going to be looking at the connections between all these organizations, people, NGOs, government departments that may appear completely isolated and operate as their own entities. And it's looking at how they actually deeply connect in terms of the way that they push their narratives out and the people involved in running them. So we've got a lot going on this year, and we're working on a members forum at the moment as well to try and add a social element to the channel, because we've got subscribers in 80 countries now. So a way of getting people to connect with each other, and especially as you know what's going on in the world and what's probably going to come this year, people are going to need support systems. They're going to need to know that they're not alone. So trying to create that social environment where, although it's an online platform, it doesn't feel like it's an online platform. It feels like it's a community and a family, which is, it's definitely the environment we've got here in the team. You know, most people that are here have been here a long time. And yeah, that's the environment that I want to try and create on the channel as well, where people feel that support. You know, you might be sat on your own in a flat in Sydney, and you know somebody in New York is thinking exactly the same as you, and you can connect with them, and you can, you know, be each other's support systems, which I think is very, very important. As people watching will know, sometimes you might be the only one in your friendship group, the only one in your family that feels a certain way, and it can be really isolating. And sometimes it can feel easier to just shut up and, you know, fit in. So trying to create something where people know there's that support out there. Okay, it might not be sat in the same house as you right now, but it is out there. That's something else that I really want to build. So yeah, we've got an exciting year, and lots more coming.
I love
Yeah.
it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's just what's needed. It's a real example of sort of saying, right, this is broken. Let's do not try and fix what's broken. Let's create something new, which is what we're all aiming for, I think. Jamie, it's been so lovely to have you on the other side of the interviewing process and really get to know you a bit more. Thank you so much for your time. Any final words you want to leave people with?
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't do many podcasts, so it's lovely to be asked. Yeah, I mean the final message is really one of motivation, really. I don't want people to listen to what I've said and listen to, you know, other alternative information and think, what's the point? It's all negative, we've lost the battle, it's doom and gloom. Because it's not. Sometimes a lot of the information that you might hear and see might not sound particularly positive, but being ignorant to it isn't helping either.
Yeah,
That's how we got into this mess. You know, you can't fight a problem unless you know what the problem is. You can remove the cause of it. And you mentioned there, if you don't like systems, create something of your own. I think we can apply that to so many. Big one being health, which I'm assuming most people listen to this will have a big passion for, is we know that the mainstream health food industries are broken. So why bother using them? Let's go back to basics. You know, let's go and meet our local farmers. Let's go and meet our local greengrocers and so on, and get things where we know where they came from. Let's look at alternative therapies when we do have problems. Let's look at prevention for our health rather than, you know, reacting when there's a problem, which is how most people's attitude is to health. It's not on their list of priorities until they get a diagnosis. Then it's the number one priority.
yeah.
Just make it the top two or three all the time, and you know the chance of getting that diagnosis reduces significantly. So I think, you know, my message I feel is an empowering one. It's one that, you know, that person that looks back at you in the mirror every morning, that's the only place to start. And if you start there, look at that self-worth, self-respect, go out there into the world and be the best version of yourself, make the best decisions that you know are going to benefit your health, your well-being, and everyone around you will benefit as a result. You know, your kids will get a better version of you if you've got more energy and a happier, your partner, whether that's your husband, your wife, get a better version of you. People at work will get a better version of you. People in the street will get a better version of you if you're happier and more vibrant and looking after yourself. And you can be that example for those around you to inspire others. And I think that's an existence that, just in my personal opinion, from my own experience, is incredibly fulfilling and gives your life a lot of meaning.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope I can encourage you to come back, because I've got about 10 more pages of questions I want to go through with you. But for everyone watching this, I hope you've got to know Jamie a bit better. I hope you've got to know the goal of Iconic. And Jamie hasn't asked me to mention Iconic at all. I'm doing it because it's my go-to place now. That is my number one place that I go to listen, feel inspired, get good, useful information. So thank you to you and all the team.
Thank
Thanks,
you very much.
Jamie.
It's been a
Take
pleasure.
care. Bye. Hi everyone. I just wanted to take a quick break in this fantastic episode to ask you this. Are you as fed up as I am with all the stress triggers that we're constantly bombarded with every day? From geoengineering, EMFs, fake and toxin-filled food, unstable political leaders that no one trusts have our best interest at heart, global agendas, financial struggles, the list feels endless, doesn't it? But here's the thing, there are solutions. Whatever challenges the so-called powers that be throw at us, nature and we as real humans always have the ability to rise above it and find the answers. I've seen it time and time again, not just in my own life, and trust me, I'm a natural worrier, but also with the many clients I've worked with over the years, both human and animal. That's why I've created something that I'm incredibly excited to share with you. My Mastering Stress and Resetting Your Nervous System online course. This is where I've pulled together all my best tools, techniques and strategies, everything that's made a huge difference for me personally and my clients. And the best part is you get lifelong access so you can revisit whenever you need. You can ask questions as you go through the course. There's an 80-page comprehensive ebook, over 4 hours of videos and audios, discounts on products and consults, and free access to bonus modules with expert guests. And to top it all, you can get the free Teachable app for on-the-go learning so you can incorporate all of this into your already busy routine. The time is right now to take back control of your health, your stress levels, and your life. So let's do this together. Click on the link below this video, join our incredible community, and no matter whatever the world throws to us, we'll thrive. Because the truth is, we are all stronger than we think we are. And when we combine the power of nature with our determination, we're simply unstoppable. So let's make this happen together. The link to join is below. And now back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. And above all, stay curious and stay free.